Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and in Mir Hashem today we will be learning Daf Kuf Ayin Amid Aleph. Our learning today should be a schos for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanasunim Batzar Ba'Shivya Ha'imne Bei Bayom Bei Be'Abasha Hamakim Yerachem Aleichem V'Yitzim Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'Afelu La'Ira Mishibur L'Geula Hashta Ba'Golo V'Zman Kariv and Emar Mein. Our learning should be a schos Refu Shalema for Yeshua Levi Ben Ahuva Malka Chana Gila Shifra Bas Yilan Udel Yitzchak Ben Tzion Ben Dusha Rivka Bashir Alein Chavadasa Baserel L'Shev Refu Shalema V'Sei Shar Kol Yisrael. We are mispal that in the schus of the limud HaTorah of Klal Yisrael, the Rabbeinu Shalom should watch over every member of Klal Yisrael b'chol makom shehem. And as this shir is really the shir for the second day of Rosh Hashanah, I want to again take the opportunity to wish everybody a ksiva v'chsima tova, a good gebencht yar, full of hatzlacha, parnasa, everything that you need, nachas, gesund, etc., etc. Okay, continuing here in Siman Shin Chav Tes, learning the halachas that pertain to what may be done for Pikuach Nefesh, says the Mechaber Siman Shin Chav Tes Sif Gimel. Misha Nafla Alav Mapiles. If you have a case where a building collapsed on somebody, and we have a passel of sveikus over here, we have numerous doubts. The first doubt that the Mechaber mentions is Safek Chai, Safek Meis. The building collapsed, somebody is buried underneath the rubble. Right away we have a Safek. I mean, is he alive or is he dead? The second Safek that the Mechaber mentions is Safek Husham, Safek Ein Sham. We have another Safek. We don't even know if there's anybody in there. Now, the Mishnah Berurah is going to reverse these two sveikas because that's the only logical way to put it. The Mishnah Berurah says that really what the Mechaber wanted to say was, the first suffix that we have is we don't know if the person is actually in there or not. So a building collapsed and somebody says, Oive, I think Ruvain was in the building. Now, we're not sure if Ruvain was in the building. It could be Ruvain got out before the building collapsed. So we have a suffix if Ruvain is in there. Now the next suffix is, this is a serious collapse. So even if Ruvain is in there, we have a suffix, is he still alive or is he nebuch dead? So that's another suffix. Then, then, even if we know somebody was in the building, and yeah, we have the suffix if he's alive or not, suffix akum, suffix Yisrael. The truth is, we know that we saw somebody go into the building, and we're not really sure the person who went into the building, was it a Yehudi or was it an Eini Yehudi? So now we have a case like this. A building collapsed. And now we saw somebody going into the building. Was it the Yehudi tenant or was it the Eini Yehudi tenant? If he's in there, is he alive or is he dead? And maybe he's not even in there at all. We saw somebody go in there an hour ago, but it could be that he left already. So we have a whole passel of sveikus over here. Says the Mechaber, mefakchin alav. We take all the rubble off of him. In other words, we do what we have to do to unbury him and reach the person that may be in there, even though we're dealing with all sorts of sveikus. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Katan Ches, Safek Chai, Halosha Begumgum, the Lashon over here is imprecise. Logically, the first suffix that we should be discussing is, we have a suffix, is there somebody in there at all or not? We don't know. Could be he got out already. The next suffix that we have to deal with is, even if he's in there, is he alive or is he dead? And indeed, the Mishnah Masechtas Yuma that records this case, that's the order that the Mishnah lists the sveikus in. Ice cut and test. So one of the sveikus that we have over here is Husham. We have a suffix whether or not the person is actually in there. Explains the Mishnah Berurah the scenario. We actually know that when the building was collapsing, at the beginning of the collapse, this wasn't like a 10-second collapse, like 1 second the building is standing and the next second is a pile of rubble. This was, the building was teetering, the building started to crumble, some stones fell off, then there was a partial collapse. Now, we know that the person was in there, but it could be that he got out before the collapse was complete, and it could be he's not even in there anymore. Venera, and the Mishnah Berurah says, it seems to me, this suffix, it doesn't have to be that we know for certain he was in there because we saw the person going into the building or we saw him in the building. You don't need that degree of certainty in order to create a suffix that he might be in there. If we know that at 10 o'clock in the morning there are always people in the building, or we know the other way, we know 11 o'clock at night, there are always people in the building. So it doesn't have to be that, oh yeah, we saw somebody walking into the building. No, there are always occupants in the building at 10 o'clock at night. That already generates the suffix that he might be in there. Nami mechalolin umefakrin esagal, we would be mechal Shabbos and we would uncover the rubble. Now, the Mishnah Berurah makes an interesting point. So, we're constantly talking over here about the question of being mechal Shabbos to go sift through rubble and unbury the rubble of a building to try to get somebody who might be trapped in a collapse. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Haba b'machteres. If you have a robber, now Baba Machteres is a case that we discuss very often. Mesechus Baba Kama, Mesechus Baba Metzia. A Baba Machteres is a breaking and entering. You have an armed robber who's breaking into an occupied house. Now the halacha is that when an armed robber breaks into an occupied house in order to steal, you're allowed to kill him. Why? Because when you have a home invasion, it's one thing when somebody stakes out a house and he thinks the house is empty and he has an inkling that there might be cash in the house, so he wants to break into the house to get the cash. That person is not coming al iske nefashos. He's not coming with the intent to kill anyone. He thinks that he's breaking into an empty house. This is a smash and grab. But when somebody does a home invasion, when somebody knows that the occupants of the home are in the home, and he comes and he breaks into an occupied house, that person is breaking into a house al iske nefashos. He's breaking into the house fully prepared to turn his weapon on the occupants of the house and kill the occupants of the house, because he knows that they're in there, and he knows that there's a very good chance that they're going to gang up against him. So that means he has weaponry, and he intends to use it. And that's why the halacha is, you're allowed to kill such a person, because such a person is called a raidif. He's somebody who's coming to kill you. You go ahead and kill him first. So a ba b'machteres is chayev misa. A machteres literally is a tunnel. He's doing a home invasion. He's tunneling in to a home. So if such a person, a ba b'machteres, he's essentially chayev misa, because you're allowed to kill him. So now the Chavetz Chaim ponders, what happens like this? Let's say somebody is a ba b'machteres. Somebody's doing a home invasion. He's going and he's invading a home. So you're really allowed to kill him. And now, his hard luck, as he's breaking into the house collapses on him. Are you allowed to go be Mechal Shabbos to save him? 2 seconds ago, you would have been allowed to kill him. So his life is forfeit. Now that the house collapsed on him, are you going to be Mechal Shabbos in order to save him? Says the Mishnah Berurah. Haba b'machteres, somebody who's a ba b'machteres, be'inyan shemutar lahargai, in a scenario where it would be permissible for you to kill him. Ube'ez chasirasai, and while he's tunneling under the building, I guess he undermined the house, nafal olav gal, it collapses on him. Ein mefakrin oisai. The halacha is, you're not Mechal Shabbos to unbury him. You know why? The gavra ketiluhu, because he's a dead man. This was a dead man walking. He was tunneling under the house. He was chayiv misa. In halacha, he's considered a gavra ketila. He's considered a dead man walking. Now the house collapsed on him. We're not going to be Mechal Shabbos to unbury him. And he brings this down. Paiskim b'shem Gemara Sanhedrin Ayin Beis Amid Beis. Next case. Yisrael bal averos l'teyavoin. If Nebuch, you have a yid who's a bal averos. It's a yid who does averos, and he does them l'teyavoin. Why does he do averos? He does averos because he can't withstand the Yetzer Hara. He has taivas. He has a shveret taiva for a cheeseburger, and he can't prevent himself from eating cheeseburgers. He's Mechal Shabbos l'teyavoin. Because parnasa, this, that, the other thing, he can't restrain himself. He can't be oimid b'nesayin. He caves into the Yetzer Hara, and he does averis. Now, when we say that he's a bal averis l'teyavoin, the reason this person is doing averis is l'teyavain, because of his desires. That's why he's doing Averis. He's not doing Averis lahachis. He's not doing Averis despite the Rabbeinu Shalom Chas v'Chalila. He's not a Yedea Rabbi Miskaven Limroid boy. He's not doing it in order to rebel against the Rabbeinu Shalom. He has a taiva. That's why he's doing Averis. So Yisrael bal Averis l'teyavain calls man she'ein koifer b'Torah. As long as he's not a koifer in Torah's Moshe, as long as he's not somebody who's denying the validity of the Torah, we would be Mechal Shabbos in order to save him. It's fascinating to me. We're saying this page of Mishnah Berurah, and as I mentioned, this page would be the page of the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and we're touching upon inyanim of Avera and Tshuva. There's a famous Chassam Sofer over here. The Chassam Sofer talks about somebody who's Oived Avodah Zarah l'Teyavain. And the Chassam Sofer puts out the idea that even if somebody's Oived Avodah Zarah l'Teyavain, there's no question in our minds that if a house collapses on him and he's bisakana, he's going to be Mahar B'tshuva. Right? There's no atheist in a foxhole. It's very nice that he does a Averis l'Teyavain. He goes ahead and he's Oived Avodah Zarah l'Teyavain. But certainly when the home collapses upon him, he's going to be Mahar B'tshuva. And as soon as he's Mahar B'tshuva, the Rebbeinu Shalom accepts tshuva. So such a person, Chassam Sofer puts out there, you have to go be Mifakech HaSakal. You have to go ahead and be B'chal Shabbos to save him. He's a Baal Tshuva. So here on Rosh Hashanah's page, we're discussing tshuva. I remember that when I was saying at Daf Yomi Shir years ago, I said, Daf Yomi, I think it was the 3.5 years. And every year on Yom Kippur's Daf, there was a mention of Kippur Avonos. Every single year on Yom Kippur's Daf, there was some mention of Tshuva and Kaparas Avonos. So here we see it in Dirshu Mishnah Berurah as well. Rosh Hashanah's Daf, we're talking about Tshuva. Aval imu lahachis, but if we're talking about a Yisrael who does Averis, lahachis, chas v'chalila, you have a Yid who's doing Averis despite the Rabbeinu Shalom. Lahachis means to anger. He's doing it to anger the Rabbeinu Shalom. Then aser lahatziloi af b'choil. Forget that you're not B'chal Shabbos to save him. You don't save such a person even on a random Tuesday. Now, to go ahead, to have the ability to decide that somebody is being over Averis lahachis, personally, I think it's beyond our pay grade. We don't have the ability to know exactly what's going on between somebody's ears. We don't know what nisyonis they had throughout life. And for a person to go make a decision on somebody else and decide that he's a balaveris lahachis, and therefore not to go save him, not to go save his life, to me that is way beyond our pay grade. Certainly we're not going to be B'chal Shabbos for such a person. Moving along to Sif Dalid, bottom line of Kosamach Tesamid Bey says the Mechaber. Let's say somebody is the victim of a collapse, and now you're going ahead and you're sifting through the rubble, and you find him. Says the Mechaber, Afilim Itza'uhu Merutzatz. You find him, and Nebuch, his body is all crushed up. She'ena Yachal Lichyais Ela Lefisha. You take one look at his guf, and you realize the gig is up. This guy is not going to live. Maybe he'll live for an hour, but he's not living longer than that. So you find him crushed in such a way, he's only going to live for a short time. Still, mifakhin, you unbury him, ubaydkim ad chotmai, and you have to inspect him by his nose. So you have the collapse, you go, you're unburying this person, you unbury his torso, and you see that he's in terrible condition, Nebuch, he's crushed, and you realize there's no way this person could survive. It doesn't matter. You have to unbury him until you could reach his nose, and you have to inspect him at his nose to see if he's breathing. If there's no sign of life at his nose, in other words, he's not breathing, oz vaday mace. At that point, he's considered mace. He's considered to be dead, and you're no longer going to be do chil Shabbos for him. Now the Mechaber makes the point that when we say you have to inspect him at the point of his nose, Loishna pagu b'roishai tchila, it doesn't matter if you started unburying him from his head. If you start unburying from his head, you're going to get to his nose very quickly. So you could inspect him at his nose. Loishna pagu b'raglav tchila. But it doesn't matter. Even if you started unburying him from his feet. So you unburied his feet. You unburied his legs. You're unburying his torso. Now, you're going to get to his heart. Now, you might think, once I get to his heart, and I could sense that his heart is not beating, so already, he's a mace. Why should I go further? Says the Mechaber, no. You have to go ad chotmai. It's not enough to sense that his heart's not beating. You have to go ad chotmai, and you have to see if he is breathing. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Yud. Oz vaday mace, if there's no sign of life at the nose, if there's no breathing, then he's dead. Tiksiv, and we don't prove this, and I mention this all the time in various Gemaras, in various areas of halacha, in various areas of Musar, like in the Chovos HaLevavos. You know, you might look at this and you might say, I don't need a raya that if a person is not breathing, he's dead. If a person's not breathing, he's dead. What do I need a raya? In other words, you have to prove to me, you should know, I'm going to prove to you from a pasuk that if a person is not breathing, he's dead. Why do I need proof from a pasuk? I mean, an Eini Yehudi also knows that when a person's not breathing, he's dead. Why do I need a raya from a pasuk? The answer is we always need rayas from psukim. Unless we find that something, that the Torah says that something is a certain way, that it doesn't matter that we accept as a davar pashut, that it is that way. The Torah has to tell us that it is that way. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Yud, how do we know that he's vadei meis if he's not breathing? Tiksiv, because there's a pasuk in Parshas Bereshis. Kol asher nishmas ruach chayim ba'apav. Actually in Parshas Noach. Who is considered alive? Kol asher nishmas ruach chayim ba'apav. Whoever's breathing. Whoever has the breath of life in his nostrils, that's who's considered alive. Mashba ruach chayim tolui ba'apav. Life is tolui in the breath of the nose. Ois kan yud aleph, the Mechaber said, loishna pagu b'raglav. It doesn't matter if you encounter the body from the feet first, and you're uncovering the body from the feet first, or from the head first. What the Mechaber wants to say is, the loy nema, you should not say, the kevet she'ayin anu margishin chiyas b'libai. If we unburied him from his feet, and we encountered his heart first, and we see that the heart's not beating, b'vadei meis, he's certainly dead, v'lo yifakech hagal yoser, and don't continue uncovering him. No, don't say that. You must uncover him until his nostrils and inspect him at his nostrils to see if he is breathing. Says the Mechaber Sif Hey, second line down, Kufay Amud Aleph. Matza El Yoinim Mesim. Let's say Chas v'shalom, there was a collapse, and you're unburying the collapse, and you find bodies, nebuch, and the upper bodies are all dead. Now, logically, you're thinking to yourself, if the bodies that I'm uncovering first, the bodies that are higher up in the rubble pile are dead, so you would think that the ones further down certainly must be dead. Says the Mechaber, no, that's not a valid thought process. We cannot decide that the bodies, the people lower down, must be dead. Elo mefakech aleihem, you have to unbury them. Shema adayin heim chayim, because there is the possibility that they are still alive. Sivav akim shatzaru al ayoros Yisrael. Unfortunately, there was a time that people might have learned this, and this might be one of those halachas that they might have thought to themselves, Baruch Hashem, not so negeya. Yeah, really? October 7th. Akum shetzaru al ayoros Yisrael. Einam Yehudim that are besieging Yiddish cities. So the Mechaber says, Im boal iskim mamoin, if you know that they're coming to rob, you know that this is a gang, they're coming to rob money. I know people Yidden who live in a certain country, I'm not going to name names right now, but I heard from my daughter had friends who lived over there, and they very casually said, yeah, we were robbed last night. And my daughter was like, what? You were robbed last night? That's terrible. Nah, it was our turn. It was your turn. Yeah. They go around the neighborhood, and we know they're getting closer. They're getting closer. They're getting closer. It was our turn. They came. They robbed us. They didn't harm anybody, and they're gone. And they'll be back in a year or so. It'll be our turn again. So in Boa Liske Mamain, if they're coming to rob money, Ein Mechalelin Aleim Es HaShabbos. We're not Mechal Shabbos to defend against people who are simply coming to rob money. And the Mishnah Berurah says in Ois Cotton Yud Beis, Al Iske Mammon, if you know that they're coming only for money, they b'shvil hefsid mammon, but to prevent a loss of money, lo yuter Isser Shabbos. We're not matir Isurei Shabbos to prevent a loss of money. Continues the Mechaber, and the Mechaber says, Bo al Iske Nefashis, fourth line down, middle of the line, Bo al Iske Nefashis. But if they came and you know that these are marauders who are chas v'chalila, they're coming to kill October 7th, Bo al Iske Nefashis, if they're coming to kill, va'afilu stam, or even if they're coming and you don't know what's going on in their heads. You don't know exactly why they're coming. Yoitzam aleim b'kli zayin. You go out against them with weaponry. Umechalelin aleim es HaShabbos, and we are mechal Shabbos to defend against them. Ubi'ir asmucha lasvar, and this again goes to October 7th. If you're talking about cities and towns that are on the border, so you're talking about the border between Israel and Gaza, you're talking about the border between Yiddish towns and animal towns. Ubi'ir hasmucha lasvar, afilu loibo el aliske teven v'kash. Then even if officially they're only coming to steal straw and stubble, mechalelin alein es HaShabbos, you go out with weaponry and you're mechal Shabbos. Haggah, the Ramah says, we're talking about here if they're coming. Says the Ramah, afilu loibo adayin. Even if they didn't come yet, elaroitzim lavoi. Even if you just heard that they want to come, then it's time to pick up arms. It's time to take up arms and get ready to defend yourself, even if you have to do it at the cost of being Mechal Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Yud Gimel. If they came al Iske Nefashis, you have to defend yourself even at the cost of Chil Shabbos. Va'afilu stam, even if you don't know exactly why they're coming. The suffix nefashis lahakal. Since there's at least a suffix that they're coming al Iske Nefashis, you are Mechal Shabbos. Ois Cotton Yudalid. If the town that they're coming to is Lasvar, if it's close to the border, Ir Shamavdelas Ben Gvul Yisrael Darimba, you have a town that separates between the border where the Yidden live, Ligvula Ivde Galulim, to the border where the Einam Yehudim live. The Chayshinan, and therefore we must be concerned. Sheim Yil Kedua, if they'll capture that border town, Misham Tehei Aretz Noicheli Kavesh Lifnehem. Sometimes once the enemy, once the Chayis Rois, once the beasts, once they get a foothold over the border, you have to be concerned that now they could just flood into the country and they could wreak havoc. So when you're dealing with a border town, you have to be much more machmir, and you'll go be Mechal Shabbos, even if you're not sure, even if they're coming, not even if you're not sure, even if you heard that they're coming just to steal straw and stubble, you'll be Mechal Shabbos because you have to prevent them from capturing the border town. Even if they're only coming for straw and stubble, when you hear that they want to come, this is going on the Ramah. This is the Ramah. The Ramah said, even if they didn't come yet. What the Ramah wants to add is, once you hear a koil, once there's a rumor going on, I heard that the poor, hapless Gazan victims, I heard that they want to sweep over the border into the south and they want to come. Even if they didn't come yet, you're allowed to go ahead and pick up your weaponry, lishmar, to defend, and you can set off the alarms. Go ahead, pick up weaponry, start making noise, to fire up the tank engines in order to scare them off so they should not come. When it comes to Pikuach Nefesh, we don't sit down and start, draying with the finger, and I'm not 100% sure. Are they really coming? Are they not coming? Maybe it's a false alarm. You heard that there's already talk that they're coming, you got to pick up the weaponry and you have to defend yourself. This din is going back on the beginning of Sivav. When the goyim that are coming, that are besieging Yiddish cities, you got to do what you got to do. Siv Zayin. Yesh Misha. There are those that say, against the backdrop of we just learned in Sivav, Yesh Misha, there are those that say, Shebizman Hazeh nowadays, Afilu Bo Aliskim Mamayin Mechalalid. Even if officially these people are only coming to take money, still Yemachal Shabbos. Why? It's very nice that the gangs are coming in and they let it be known, they're only coming to steal. But you know what? They're attacking a city and they're coming to steal. There's going to be one Yid who's going to make a bad decision and he's going to stand up against them and then they'll kill him. Because Bizman Hazeh, they're not afraid. When we're living in Eretz Yisrael and we have a Malchus Yisrael, they're afraid. But Rabbi Isai, even though we have plenty of people living in Eretz Yisrael, and even though the names on the letterheads of the ministers are Yiddish names, this is not a Malchus Yisrael. So we're not living in Eretz Yisrael with a Malchus Yisrael. This is not Shlomo HaMelech, David HaMelech, Malchei Yehuda. When that's the case, then if they're coming on Mamayin, so we're not afraid that they're going to kill. Nowadays, they come on Mamayin, somebody stands up against them, Nebuch, they'll kill him. And therefore, heavy iskei nefashos. Says the Ramah, you have to understand the time and place, and you have to have a good understanding of what the facts are on the ground. Is this a danger or is this not a danger? And again, ein medaktikin bibikuach nefesh. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if somebody will stand up against them, they'll kill him. V'hani miliki shabo al rabim. Says the Chavetz Chaim, this halacha is really only germane when the Einam Yehudim are attacking a tzibur. So when the Einam Yehudim are coming against a town and they're coming against a tzibur, that's when you have the right to make the cheshbon. You can make the calculation and you could say we have to be Mechal Shabbos, because if they come for Mammon, somebody in the town is going to end up standing up against them, and then it's going to be Pekuach Nefesh. You have to be concerned. Somebody might stand up against them. But when this is not a shaila on a town, it's a shaila on one person. So, chas v'chalila, lo yaleinu, somebody goes ahead and he sees people are breaking into his house. It's not for him to make a cheshbon and go ahead and say, well, I mean, again, if it's a home invasion, then yes, you have to be choshish that they're ready to kill you. But like this is, I don't know how negeya this calculation is specifically for us nowadays. But what the Mishnah Berurah is saying is, this cheshbon, that you could turn around and you could say we could be Bechal Shabbos, because it's considered Pekuach Nefesh, because one person might stand up against them and get killed. If the cheshbon is only on one person, if one person has this shaila, and he knows that if he just gives them his money, they'll leave him alone, he shouldn't go ahead and be Bechal Shabbos. Just give away your money. Don't stand up against them and say, now I have to be Bechal Shabbos in order to save my life. If you could save your life by just, your money or your life, okay, I'll give you my money. And then the guy's going to leave. Fine, let him leave. The Ramah said, "Hakol lefi ha'inyan." Hainu lefi masha b'shar kaisem u'pachazusasan. Somebody who's making this decision, these are bad decisions to have to make. You have to be mishayer. The gangs that are coming. What is it? Is it a mad foaming at the mouth, a rabble like October 7th, drugged up to their eyeballs, and the flames of hatred stoked, and they're not interested in a nickel? You see, that's one of the mistakes that the West, including the United States, makes all the time. They think that this is an economical issue. You make trade deals and you give them money and you give them prosperity and you give them job opportunities and everything will be okay. What they don't understand is that that's not the case at all. This is hatred. That's what it is. These thugs, the October 7th thugs and all of their ilk, all they're interested in is killing. They're not interested in anything else. So when you know that that's what you're dealing with, you have to be Mechal Shabbos. There's no shaila. If you know that that's not the case, you have to know that that's not the case. If you know that it's not the case, if you know that they're poor people, they want to get some money, and if you give them the money, everything will be fine. It's a different story. V'dan, you should know, says the Mishnah Berurah, the Hayoim, nowadays, and he's talking about his days in Poland and Radin. V'dan, the Hayoim, kishabou me'umais, shechutz ligvuleinu lishlol shlolol v'lovais baz, when gangs of goyim come to go and steal, the Chavetz Chaim says that in his days, for certain, if marauders came into the town, even if you knew for certain that they're only coming for money, so really there's no pikuach nefesh here, you're mechuyev to go ahead and take up weapons and go out against them to defend. And he says, kedina de malchusa. This was actually dina de malchusa. The law was that if marauders come, every upstanding citizen is mechuyev to go take up weaponry to defend the city. Because if you don't, if the Yidden don't take up arms against the marauders, the Einem Yehudim are going to look at them as being treasonous. These are not good citizens. What kind of good citizen doesn't go ahead and protect the town? Moving along to Sifches. Says the Mechaber, Haroya Svina Sheyesh Ba Yisrael Hamuturefes Bayam. If somebody sees a ship out by sea, and he knows that there are Yidden on the ship, and he sees that the Yid is foundering, V'chein nar shoitef, or there's a river overflowing its banks, and there's going to be a tsunami, there's going to be a major flood over here, and we know that there are Yidden in the town. V'chein yochanan nirdaf mipnei anos, or if we see a Yisrael being chased by a bandit. Mitzvah kol adam lechal aleim Shabbos kedei lahatzilam. It is a mitzvah on every Yiddish individual to be mechal Shabbos, to go save the person that is in danger. This is a halacha that we discussed earlier in Siman Shinvav. What if we know that there's a Yiddish captive in the hands of Einem Yehudim, and the Einem Yehudim are not threatening his life, but they are trying to force him to be over Averis? What is the halacha? For that, we have to look back at Siman Shinvav. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if somebody's being chased by a bandit. Now, a stam, when the Mechaber uses the word anos, we always assume by default that he's talking about a Goyish bandit. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'hadin mi Yisrael, it could even be a Yiddish bandit. Right? If you see that a Yid is being chased by a Yisrael who's a bandit, right? Kishu b'shar sheyovel lidei sakana. So if Ruvain is being chased by Shimon, but Shimon is a no-goodnik, and Shimon is a bandit, and Shimon is a murderer. It's very nice that he's a Yisrael, but he's a murderer. So now Ruvain is in sakana. It's a mitzvah to go save Ruvain, even if you have to kill Shimon. Because you're allowed to save Ruvain by killing Shimon. Or if you see a person is being chased by a venomous snake or by a bear, it's a mitzvah to go save him. Even if you have to transgress Shabbos in many, many ways. This is the Mishnah Berurah points out something interesting here. Let's say there's a crazed murderer that's armed to the hilt, that he's stabbing and shooting and this and that. And there are Yisraelim there that are in danger. And you want to go ahead and you want to help save them. But by entering the fight, you might get killed. So says the Mishnah Berurah, if in order to go save the other people, you're going to put yourself into sakana, you're not mechuyev to do that. The chayav kaidam l'chay chaveroi, because your life comes before your friend's life. We actually learn this out from a pasuk. Pasuk says, "V'chei achicha imach." You save somebody if then he's going to be able to live with you. But if you're going to surrender your life in order to save him, chayecha kaidam. You have a greater responsibility to your own life than you have to somebody else's life. Even the common culture tends to romanticize the opposite. Al pi halacha, that's not true. You have a greater responsibility to your own life than you do to somebody else's life. Even if you're only going to put yourself in a suffix sakana, You're not allowed to put yourself in a suffix sakana in order to save the other person. Now, this is a high level. There's details and nuances to this that are beyond the scope of what we do here. Ulam, tzarich lishkal advarim heitev, a person does have to make a very good evaluation. Im yesh by suffix sakana, v'loy ledaktik b'yoser. But you can't just chicken out. In other words, you look at it, you say, I don't know, this looks like a suffix sakana to me. Chayecha kaidem, I'm not getting involved over here. No. It's only if there's a real sakana. And don't be medaktik kikichut asayra that, it looks to me like, there might be a suffix here, because maybe this, maybe that, maybe this, maybe that, maybe this, maybe that. If you do careful with such a thing, then it will actually befall you. Okay, coming to Sif Test, the final Sif here in Siman Shin Chav Tes. A halacha that many people know about, based on things like Hatzalah, etc., says the Mekaber Kol Hayotzim Lahatzil. When a first responder goes out to save lives, they're allowed to go back home with their weaponry. What the Mechaber is talking about over here is somebody is going out of the city. Let's say in the city they hear that a neighboring city is under siege, is being besieged by Goyim. And they have to, and it's Sakanas Nefashos. So we just learned the halacha. You have to go be B'chal Shabbos to go save them. So you're taking up your sword, you're taking up your guns, and you're going out to go save these people. But the problem is that you have to go out of the Tchum Shabbos. So you're leaving. Are you allowed to leave the Tchum Shabbos? The halacha is yes, you are. Now, usually once you go out of the Tchum Shabbos, you're restricted to the Dalet Amos that you're in. Over here, the halacha is that you're allowed to come back home. Not only are you allowed to come back home, you're even allowed to come back home carrying your weaponry, which already now you could be dealing with Isurei Daraisa. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Chaf, Chayzrim Kedei Shaloi Lahachshilam Lasad Lavai Shaloi Yirtzu Lahatzel Oid. If you're not going to let them return back home, so let's say the Hatzalah fellow, if you're going to tell the first responder that he has to go drive to a call, but now once he gets to the call, he's not allowed to go back home, so you know what? Next Shabbos, when there's a call, the Hatzalah member is going to say, Mali Latzar Azois. I'm not putting myself in that situation again, where I'm going to be stuck 10 miles away from home with nowhere to stay and anything else. I'm not doing that. So we're makel on the back end because we want to protect what has to be done on the front end. This halacha that the Mechaber says that they could come back with their weapons, even through Rishus HaRabim, etc., one of the reasons for that is also because if we're going to make them put down their weaponry before they embark on the way home, we are afraid that they could become bisakana on the way home. Says the Rishrais Kal Chavalef Lebekaiman Ayin Lekaban Besimin Tez Zayin. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Siman Shin Lamed. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. This list of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua for us. Parnas and Shidduchim Tol as need. We should be zeicher to see the Biaskal Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Amen. And everyone should have a ksiva v'chsima tova, a good gebenched yar. Be well.